You make the journey back in the dining car, navigating the shifting metal plates of the vestibules and the sudden blasts of freezing air. By the time you reach your own carriage, the Blue Sleeper, you feel a distinct shift in atmosphere. The dining car was loud, bright, and performative, a place to see and be seen. But the sleeping car at night is hushed, a long, narrow tunnel of polished mahogany and dim electric light. Most of the compartment doors are closed now. Shoes have been left outside in the hallway for polishing, looking like little leather ghosts standing guard. At the very end of the corridor, in a small alcove next to the conductor's cabin, you find the beating heart of the carriage. It isn't the engine, it is the samovar. You might think of a samovar as just a fancy Russian teapot, but that's like calling a steam engine a kettle. Standing before you is a massive, gleaming cylinder of brass, standing about 3 feet tall. It radiates heat like a small sun. Inside, a vertical pipe is filled with burning charcoal, heating the water that surrounds it to a permanent, rolling boil. It is a primitive, beautiful machine, a coal-fire hydration station that has been burning since you left Moscow and will not go out until you hit the Pacific Ocean. Standing guard over this brass idol is your Provodnik. We met him briefly on the platform, but now, in the quiet of the night, you see him in his element. He is an older man with a mustache that curls up at the ends and a uniform that is immaculately kept despite the cold dust. He is not just a ticket collector. He is the captain of this specific carriage. He stokes the boiler. He polishes the brass. He makes the beds. And most importantly, he dispenses the tea. You nod to him, and he knows exactly what you want. He doesn't ask. He just reaches for a glass. This brings us to a piece of iconic design trivia, the Podstakanik. If you were served tea in a normal porcelain cup on a vibrating train, it would likely shatter or tip over. If you were served it in a plain glass, you would burn your fingers. So, the Russian railways adopted the Podstakanik, literally thing under the glass. It's a heavy, ornate metal holder with a handle, usually made of nickel-plated copper or silver. It cages the glass, giving a low center of gravity and protecting your hand from the heat. Holding one makes you feel like you are drinking tea out of a piece of industrial architecture. The Provodnik performs the ritual. He places a few spoonfuls of Zavarka, a super concentrated, almost black tea extract from a small teapot sitting on top of the samovar, into the glass. Then he opens the spigot of the main brass tank. Boiling water hisses out, diluting the concentrate to a drinkable, mahogany-colored brew. He drops in 2 lumps of sugar and a slice of lemon. He hands it to you. The glass rattles softly in its metal cage. As you hold the hot tea, watching the steam rise, you might consider the complex history of a man who served it. This leads to a shadowy academic debate. The Provodnik is spy. Historians have long argued about the extent of the surveillance state on the Trans-Siberian. In the early 20th century, the Tsar's secret police, the Okhrana, were terrified of revolutionaries moving between Europe and Asia. Many scholars believe that every Provodnik was an informant, paid to listen to keyholes, read discarded letters, and report on who was meeting whom in the dining car. Was the man who just made your tea a humble servant? Or is he memorizing your face for a file in St. Petersburg? It adds a layer of more intrigue to the service. He smiles at you, a kindly, grandfatherly smile. You smile back, deciding that if he is a spy, he makes an excellent cup of tea. You carry your prize back down the corridor, balancing the Podstakanik against the sway of the train. You slide your compartment door open and step back into your private sanctuary. The room has been transformed while you were at dinner. The Provodnik, efficient ghost that he is, has been here. The velvet seat has been folded down to reveal a pristine white bed. The sheets turned down at a sharp 45-degree angle. The heavy curtains are drawn tight. The lamp is dimmed. You sit on the edge of the bed, the tea warming your hands. You take a sip. It is strong, tannic, and sweet. This is caravan tea. For centuries before the railway, tea was brought from China to Russia by camel caravans across the steppe. It took 18 months to make the journey. Here is a mainstream historical fact that tea snobs love. Russians historically claimed their tea was superior to British tea because British tea was transported by sea. The damp, salty air of the ocean voyage supposedly ruined the flavor, while the dry, cold air of the Siberian caravan route preserved it perfectly. whether that's true or just marketing. The tea you are drinking tonight tastes incredibly clean. It cuts through the richness of the dinner you just ate. You place the glass in the special holder on the small table. You look at the map on the wall. You are barely an inch along the red line that spans a continent. Outside, the world is rushing by in the dark. You can't see it, but you can feel the vastness of it. You are a tiny speck of light moving through a continent of darkness. There is a specific comfort in the ritual of the samovar. It's the knowledge that no matter what time it is, 3 a.m. or high noon, there's always hot water boiling at the end of the hall. It is the hearth of the train, in a landscape that can kill you with cold in minutes. That brass tank is a symbol of survival. It represents the triumph of heat over ice. You finish the tea, the sugar granules crunching slightly between your teeth, a traditional Russian way to drink it called perkusku, though you let yours dissolve. You feel a deep, settling warmth spreading through your chest. The caffeine isn't keeping you awake. Strangely, it's comforting you. It's the taste of arrival. You begin to undress for bed. You hang your suit in the narrow wardrobe. Place your watch on a nightstand. You climb under the heavy duvet. It's thick, filled with down, weighted to keep you from rolling out of bed if the train hits a rough patch. You reach up and click off the electric lamp. Now, it is just you and the blue nightlight. And the sound. Clack, 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 clack. It is louder now that you are horizontal, vibrating up through the mattress. But it isn't annoying, it's rhythmic. It's a lullaby sung by steel. You close your eyes, visualizing Provodnik at the end of the hall, polishing his brass, watching the fire, guarding the water. You are safe. The door is locked. The tea was hot, and the train is carrying you relentlessly toward the sunrise. You do not wake up all at once. You are pulled from sleep in stages, synchronized with the rhythm of the train. The first thing you notice is the light. It isn't the harsh, abrupt sunlight of a bedroom window. It is a flickering, strobing gray light leaking around the edges of the velvet curtains. It pulses. Flash shadow. Flash shadow. You check your watch. It is 8 a.m., but the concept of time is already beginning to dissolve. You're operating on Moscow time, the railway standard that dictates every clock on the network, regardless of the local sun. Your body feels the distance traveled. There is a specific stiffness that comes from sleeping on a vibrating surface, a subtle reminder that while you rested, your body traveled 400 miles east. You reach up and pinch the latch of the heavy blind, sliding it upward. Welcome to the taiga. Yesterday, the view was industrial outskirts and farmland. Today, the world has been swallowed by the forest. This is the largest biome on Earth, a coniferous belt that wraps around the top of the planet like a green scarf. But from the window, it looks like an infinite barcode. Millions of silver birch trees and dark pines blur past your vision. It is hypnotic. There is a Russian word for the trance state induced by staring at this endless repetition. Toska. It translates loosely to a mixture of longing, boredom, and a dull, spiritual ache. Looking at the taiga, you understand it. It is beautiful, but it is indifferent to you. It goes on forever. You need to wash the sleep from your eyes. You grab your toiletry kit and step into the corridor. It is quieter now. The Provodnik is at the far end, vacuuming the carpet with a device that looks like it belongs in a Soviet space museum. The bathroom is a lesson in utilitarian engineering. It is a small steel closet smelling faintly of disinfectant and tobacco. The sink is the size of a cereal bowl. To get water, you must press upward on a metal pin on the faucet. As soon as you let go, the water stops. It requires a distinct gymnastic coordination to wash your face. One hand pressing the pin, the other cupping the water, bracing your hip against the wall to counter the sway of the carriage. It is primitive, but the water is icy cold and wakes you up instantly. Back in the corridor, the train begins to decelerate. The rhythm changes from a gallop to a trot, then a slow grind. Metal shrieks against metal. You feel the heavy inertia of thousands of tons of steel resisting the urge to stop. This is your first major daylight stop, a 20-minute halt. You grab your coat. The corridor fills with passengers, a sudden community of bed-headed travelers eager for fresh air. You step down the steep metal stairs and onto the platform. The air hits you like a physical blow. It is significantly colder than Moscow. It tastes crisp, smelling of ozone, burning coal, and damp earth. You are at a station in the Urals. The architecture here is distinctive. Pastel-colored station buildings with white trim, imperial and imposing, standing in stark contrast to the gray sky. But the real attraction isn't the building, it's the bazaar. Lined up along the platform are the babushkas. These grandmothers are the unauthorized catering corps of the Trans-Siberian. They are bundled in layers of wool and floral headscarves, standing behind prams and folding tables laden with goods. This is where you find the real food. You walk down the line, inspecting the wares. There are buckets of berries picked from the forest, dried fish that look like wood carvings, and jars of home-pickled gherkins. You stop at a woman selling pierogi, fried dough buns. She doesn't speak English, and you don't speak Russian, but commerce here is universal. You point. She holds up fingers for the price. You hand over a few ruble notes. She hands you a bun wrapped in a piece of greasy newspaper. It is warm in your hand, a small heater against the chill. You take a bite. It is filled with potato and dill, salty and comforting. It tastes better than anything the dining car could produce because it tastes like the place. As you chew, you look at the undercarriage of the train. Men in orange vests are walking the length of the track, hitting the wheels with long-handled iron hammers. Clang, clang. They are listening to the ring. A clear bell tone means the steel is solid. A dull thud means a crack. It is a safety ritual that hasn't changed in a century. The Provodnik waves his flag. The whistle blows, a lonely, mournful sound that echoes off the surrounding hills. You scramble back on board. An hour later, you are sitting by the window with a fresh glass of tea when you see it. It passes in a split second, so fast you might miss it if you aren't looking. A white stone obelisk stands by the side of the tracks. On one side, it says Europe. On the other, Asia. There is no border guard, no passport check, no ocean to cross. Just a stone marker in the woods. But geographically and psychologically, you have just crossed the divide. You have left the continent of cathedrals, the Renaissance, and industrial revolutions behind. You are now in Asia. This moment triggers a reflection on the sheer madness of the track you are riding on. This is the Great Siberian Way. When construction began in 1891, the terrain was considered impassable. There were no maps for much of it. The engineers had to contend with permafrost, ground that is frozen rock-hard year-round. In the summer, the top layer melted into a malaria-ridden swamp that swallowed equipment whole. In the winter, the temperature dropped to 40 degrees below zero, snapping steel rails like glass. Historians estimate that for every kilometer of track laid, one worker died. They were convict soldiers and peasants, digging the earth with wooden shovels and wheelbarrows. As your train glides smoothly over the rails at 60 miles per hour, you are riding on top of a graveyard of imperial ambition. The smoothness of your journey is a direct result of the brutality of theirs. The train banks deeply to the left, winding through the foothills of the Ural Mountains. The landscape is becoming more dramatic. Rolling hills, rocky outcrops, and fast-flowing rivers that look black and cold. You are climbing the spine of Russia. You finish your tea. The sugar has settled at the bottom of the glass again. The excitement of the stop has faded, replaced by the rhythm of the journey. You realize that this is the true nature of the Trans-Siberian. It isn't about the destinations. It is about the patience required to get between them. You open a book, but you find yourself staring out the window again. The birch trees resume their flickering dance. You are deep in Asia now, and you still have 5,000 miles to go. By the third day, the novelty of the train begins to wear off, replaced by a strange, floating domesticity. You have entered the Middle Passage. The excitement of departure is a distant memory, and the destination is still impossibly far away. This is where the train ceases to be a mode of transport and becomes a world unto itself. You wake up, and the landscape has changed again. The dramatic hills of the Urals have been ironed out. You are now crossing the West Siberian Plain. This is the flattest place on Earth. It is a staggering 2 million square kilometers of nothingness, a vast, frozen swamp in the summer, a white ocean in the winter. The horizon is a perfectly straight line. broken only by the occasional lonely village of wooden houses sinking into the mud or snow. The view does not change for hours. It does not change for days. This monotony forces you to turn inward, and more importantly, toward your neighbors. You cannot survive the Trans-Siberian in isolation. The compartment door, which you kept closed on the first day, now stays open. The social ecosystem of the carriage begins to evolve. You start to recognize the regulars. There's a soldier returning to a garrison in the east, smoking endless cigarettes in the vestibule between cars. There's a family with 2 small children who have somehow turned their compartment into a chaotic nursery. And then there are your immediate roommates. Russian train etiquette is a specific and subtle dance. When a new passenger arrives in your compartment, there is a ritual. They enter, stow their luggage under the seat, and change immediately. Off go the jeans and stiff shirts. On come the topachki, slippers, and the tracksuits. The train is their living room, and they dress for comfort. Then comes the food. The small table between the bunks is communal ground. You learn the rule quickly. If it's on the table, it's shared. Your neighbor, a middle-aged man with gold teeth and a kind face, unpacks a grocery bag. He lays out a spread that defies the laws of physics. How did all this fit in that small bag? A stick of smoked sausage, a loaf of dark rye bread, a jar of instant coffee, and a ubiquitous hard-boiled eggs. He gestures to you. You offer your packet of biscuits in return. The language barrier is dismantled by the breaking of bread. You communicate in sign language, smiles, and single words. You learn that he is an engineer going to Irkutsk. He learns you are a tourist. He shakes his head, laughing, wondering why anyone would do this for fun. He slices the sausage with a pocket knife and hands you a piece on the blade. It is fatty, garlicky, and delicious. In the afternoon, the train slows for a major arrival. The emptiness of the plain is suddenly interrupted by industrial sprawl. Smokestacks rise like cathedrals in the distance. Concrete apartment blocks march in grid formation. You have reached Novosibirsk. This is the unofficial capital of Siberia, a city of 1.6 million people that feels like it appeared out of nowhere. As the train pulls into the station, a mint green giant of Soviet neoclassical architecture, you realize the scale of Russian colonization. Novosibirsk is a railway child. Before the first bridge was built across the Ob River in 1893, this place was nothing but a cluster of huts. The city owes its entire existence to the tracks you are riding on. It exploded into being, becoming the Chicago of Siberia, a boom town of trade, industry, and during the war, evacuation. The stop is long, 40 minutes. You step out. The air here feels different than in the Urals. It is heavier, laden with the exhaust of a million cars and the biting cold of the deep steppe. You walk the platform. You see the sheer logistical might of the operation here. Freight trains rumble past on adjacent tracks. Seemingly endless chains of tankers carrying oil, timber, and coal from the belly of Siberia to the markets of the West. This is the economic artery of the nation, pulsating in real time. You catch a glimpse of the city beyond the station. It is monumental. You might see the dome of the Novosibirsk Opera and Ballet Theater, the largest in Russia, bigger even than the Bolshoi in Moscow. It is a reminder that Siberia is not just a gulag or a wilderness. It is a civilization with its own pride and high culture, thriving in a climate that wants to kill it. Back on the train, the departure from Novosibirsk marks a psychological shift. You are now truly deep in the interior. The distance to Moscow is no longer measured in hours, but in time zones. You are shifting your watch again. Your body is confused. It is 3 p.m. in Moscow, 7 p.m. locally, but your stomach thinks it is lunchtime. This is train lag, a permanent state of jet lag that never resolves because you are constantly moving east. As evening falls, the landscape becomes spooky. The birch trees return, illuminated by the train's headlights. You return to your compartment. The engineer has cracked open a bottle. It isn't vodka. It's cognac from Armenia. He pours a shot into a plastic cup. Zaznakomstvo, he says, to getting acquainted. You drink. It burns, then warms. The train rattles on. The conversation turns to the map. He points to the route ahead. Tomorrow, the terrain will change again. You are approaching the Yenisei River and the wilder, more rugged taiga of eastern Siberia. You look out the window, but the black glass only reflects your own face and the warm, yellow interior of the compartment. The world outside is absolute darkness. There are no street lights, no house lights, just thousands of miles of forest. You feel a profound sense of isolation, but it isn't frightening. It is liberating. You are a capsule of light traveling through the void. You have no internet, no emails, no responsibilities. You have only the rhythm of the wheels, the taste of cheap cognac, and the stories of a stranger. You realize that you have stopped worrying about when you will arrive. You have surrendered to the journey. The engineer climbs into the top bunk. The lights are dimmed. You lie in the dark, listening to the heavy breathing of the train as it climbs a slight gradient. You are halfway across the world, and you are exactly where you are supposed to be. The fourth morning brings a dramatic shift in verticality. For days, your world has been a two-dimensional plane of flat snow and birch. But now, the horizon is beginning to buckle and heave. You're entering the central Siberian plateau. The train engines roar louder, the pitch of the diesel deepening as the locomotive grapples with gravity for the first time in 1,000 miles. You are approaching Krasnoyarsk. If Novosibirsk was the brain of Siberia, a hub of science and trade, Krasnoyarsk is its muscle. As the train curves around the bend, the city reveals itself as a sprawling industrial titan, nestled in a valley of dramatic, jagged hills. Smokestacks punch through the morning mist, releasing plumes of white vapor that freeze instantly in the upper atmosphere. It is a gritty, hard-working skyline, framed by the raw beauty of the Sayan Mountains. You pull into the station. It is busy, frantic even. This is a major junction. You step out to stretch your legs, and you immediately notice the air is different here. It bites harder. You are closer to the Arctic Circle now than you are to Moscow. The locals on the platform are dressed in serious fur, full mink coats and Ushanka hats with the ear flaps tied down tight. There's a piece of trivia in your pocket right now that connects you to this place. You fish out a crumpled 10-ruble note, if you can still find one, as they are being replaced by coins. The image on the bill is of Krasnoyarsk. It depicts the bridge over the river you are about to cross and the hydroelectric dam that powers the region. It is a reminder that in Russia, infrastructure is celebrated like religious iconography. The whistle blows. You reboard, but you don't go back to your cabin. You stand in the corridor, pressing your forehead against the cool glass. You are waiting for the crossing. A few minutes after leaving the station, the ground drops away. You are suddenly suspended over the Yenisei River. The Yenisei is not just a river. It is a moving ocean. It is the largest river system flowing into the Arctic Ocean, and it marks the official divide between West and East Siberia. To the west lies the flat, oil-rich plain you just traversed. To the east lies the rugged, wild, mountainous terrain of the ancient continent. The bridge rumbles beneath you. Looking down, the water is dark, gunmetal gray, and terrifyingly fast. It is so wide that in the winter mist, you can barely see the other bank. The water here rarely freezes completely, despite the sub-zero temperatures, because of the massive hydroelectric discharge from the dam upstream. It steams, creating a permanent fog bank that shrouds the railway bridge in mystery. Crossing it feels like flying over the river Styx. Once you cross the Yenisei, the atmosphere inside the train shifts again. You are now in deep Siberia. The towns become smaller, the distances between them longer. The mobile signal, which had been spotty, now vanishes for hours at a time. You are off the grid. This isolation brings a certain grim reality to the forefront. Hygiene. By day 4, the glamour of the romantic journey is battling the biological reality of not having showered since Moscow. Unless you are the ultra-luxury Grand Trans-Siberian Express private tourist train, which you are not. You're on the Rossiya, the working train. There are no showers in second or third class. You retreat to the bathroom for the Trans-Siberian bath. This is a logistical operation involving a pack of wet wipes, a bottle of water, and a lot of contortion. You strip down in the freezing cold steel closet. Try not to touch the walls. You wipe away the cold dust that somehow permeates everything. Your skin, your hair, your clothes. It is a humble, humiliating ritual. But when you put on fresh socks and a clean shirt, you feel like a new person. You emerge smelling of lemon-scented alcohol wipes, a scent that will forever remind you of this train. Back in your compartment, the landscape has transformed. The birch trees are giving way to the dark, brooding taiga, massive pines and larches that look like they have stood there since the Pleistocene. The train winds through valleys, hugging the sides of cliffs. This is the most scenic part of the ride so far. As you gaze out at the pristine wilderness, the engineer, your compartment mate, points out the window at a seemingly empty stretch of forest. Closed city, he says quietly. He is talking about Zeleznogorsk, formerly Krasnoyarsk 26. It is a city that for decades did not exist on any map. It has no address, only a post office box number. Hidden inside a hollowed-out granite mountain nearby is a nuclear facility designed to produce weapons-grade plutonium. It was built underground so it could survive a direct nuclear hit. This is the paradox of the view. You're looking at nature in its purest form. Untouched snow, ancient trees, crystal clear air. Yet, hiding just behind the tree line are the darkest secrets of the Soviet century. The Trans-Siberian was the artery that built these secret cities, ferrying scientists, prisoners, and uranium into the heart of nowhere. The beauty of the landscape masks a history of terrifying power. The sun begins to set early, dipping behind the mountains at 4 p.m. The darkness in East Siberia is absolute. There is no ambient light from cities to reflect off the clouds. The sky is a heavy velvet black. But then you look up through the train window, you see the stars. Without light pollution, the Milky Way looks like a torn rip in the fabric of the sky, spilling light. It is brighter than you have ever seen it. You can see the distinct colors of the stars, blue, red, gold. The train feels insignificant under this canopy, a tiny metal worm crawling across the face of a sleeping giant. Dinner tonight is a shared affair again. The engineer brings out salo, cured slabs of pork fat with garlic. It sounds unappealing to a Western palate, but in this cold, your body screams for calories. You slice it thin and eat it on black bread with mustard. It melts in your mouth like butter. It warms you from the inside. You talk about where you're going. By call, you say. The engineer smiles reverently. Ozero, he says. The lake. In Russia, you don't need to specify which lake. There's only one. Tomorrow, he promises. Tomorrow you see the pearl. You go to sleep with a sense of anticipation. The rhythm of the train has changed again. It feels faster, urgent. The flat plains are behind you. The mountains are around you. And ahead lies the oldest, deepest, and clearest lake on the planet. The train charges into the black taiga, clattering towards a sacred sea. You awake to a sensation you haven't felt in days. Stillness. The vibration has stopped. The silence is heavy and absolute. You pull up the blind. You are in Irkutsk. It is early morning and the station is a hive of activity. Irkutsk is the Paris of Siberia, a title that seems ambitious until you step out of the station. While the Soviet concrete is present, the soul of the city lies in its decaying imperial grandeur. You catch glimpses of the famous wooden lace, elaborately carved timber houses that lean precariously, sinking slowly into the permafrost. They are intricate, beautiful, and look like gingerbread houses left out in the snow too long. This is the most critical supply stop of the journey. Your provodnik is pacing the platform, warning everyone, Trit sat minute, 30 minutes. You join the scramble. You aren't looking for bread or sausage today. You are looking for the legend. You find her standing by a folding table near the rear of the train, a vendor selling omel. Omel is a whitefish that exists nowhere else on Earth. It is endemic to the ecosystem you are about to enter. The fish on the table are hot smoked, their golden skins glistening in the cold air. They smell of wood smoke and rich river oil. You buy two. They are wrapped in inevitable newspaper. They burn your fingers through the gloves. You reboard, and the train departs Irkutsk with a distinct sense of purpose. The landscape begins to undulate wildly. The train is climbing the Primorsky Range. The engines roar, straining against the incline. The tracks twist and turn like a snake, navigating tight switchbacks. You are gaining altitude, cutting through a dense forest of silver birch and cedar. Then, The train crests a pass and begins a long, sweeping descent. The trees thin out. The light changes. It becomes brighter, a harsh, reflective glare that forces you to squint. And then you see it. It starts as a sliver of white-blue on the horizon, sandwiched between the mountains and the sky. Then it expands, dominates, and swallows the entire view. Lake Baikal. The train hits the bottom of the descent at Slydyanka and makes a hard left turn. For the next 3 hours, you are not just riding near the lake. You are riding on its edge. The tracks are laid so close to the shoreline that if you open the window and leaned out, which is strictly forbidden and physically impossible due to the cold, you feel you could touch the ice. Lake is a pathetic word for this. It is a sea. It stretches 40 miles across to the invisible far shore and 400 miles north. It holds 20% of the world's unfrozen fresh water. If you drained all the Great Lakes of North America, Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, Ontario, they would barely fill this trench. It is a mile deep. Because it is winter, the beast is sleeping. The water is frozen solid. But this isn't the white, snowy ice of a skating rink. This is Baikal ice. The wind here is so fierce that it sweeps the snow off the surface, polishing the ice until it's transparent. You look down from the train window and see a mesmerizing mosaic of turquoise cracks, deep blue fissures, and suspended bubbles of methane gas frozen in time. It looks like the surface of Europa. The train slows down here, ostensibly for safety, but it feels like reverence. You sit at the small table, unwrapping your omelette. The skin peels away easily, revealing soft, white flesh. You take a bite. It is smoky, salty, and incredibly delicate. You are eating the lake while looking at it. It is a sensory synchronization that burns into your memory. As you chew, you notice the engineering marvel you are riding on. This section of the track is known as the Golden Buckle of the Russian Steel Belt. It was the most expensive and difficult part of the Trans-Siberian to build. Before this track existed, trains had to be ferried across the lake on massive ice-breaking ships. In the depths of winter, they laid temporary tracks directly on the ice, dragging the locomotives across the frozen water. It was a terrifying gamble with physics that frequently resulted in trains plunging into the abyss. Now you hug the cliffside. You pass through tunnel after tunnel, blasted out of the solid rock by Italian stonemasons and Russian convicts a century ago. The engineer is awake now, looking out the window with a look of quiet pride. "The pearl," he whispers again. He points to a dark spot on the ice, far in the distance. "Nerpa," he says. You squint. You can't be sure, but it might be a Baikal seal. They are the only freshwater seals in the world. Biology cannot explain how they got here, thousands of miles from the ocean. They are just another mystery of the lake. The light on the ice shifts as the sun moves. The colors turn from electric blue to deep violet. The scale of the place makes you feel microscopic. In the cities, Moscow, Ekaterinburg, Novosibirsk, you felt the weight of human history. Here, you feel the weight of geological time. This rift is 25 million years old. It will be here long after the train stops running. Gradually, the train begins to peel away from the coast. It turns inward, following the delta of the Selengar River. The blue expanse of Baikal recedes behind the mountains, disappearing like a dream. You feel a sense of loss as it vanishes. But the landscape that replaces it offers a new kind of intrigue. You're entering the Republic of Buryatia. The architecture changes instantly. The tall, steep-roof Russian cottages disappear, replaced by lower, flat-roof structures. The faces on the platform at the small local stops change too. You see high cheekbones, dark eyes, and skin weathered by the steppe wind. These are the Buryat people, distinct from the Slavic Russians. They are cousins of the Mongols. The train is moving toward the border regions now. The atmosphere in the carriage relaxes. The intensity of the Baikal crossing has faded, replaced by a lazy afternoon sun. You finish the last of the omelette and wipe your hands. You check your map. You are approaching Ulanyud. This is a critical junction. For many travelers, this is the end of the Trans-Siberian proper. Here, the tracks split. To the east, the rails continue to Vladivostok and Pacific Ocean. 6 more days of travel. To the south, The Trans-Mongolian line breaks off, heading toward Ulaanbaatar and Beijing. You are at the crossroads of Asia. The train conductor comes by with tea. He seems more cheerful today. Perhaps it's the sunshine, or perhaps it's because he knows the hardest part of the route is behind him. You drink the tea, watching the dry, rolling step drip by. The trees are gone. The world is opening up. You are leaving the forest and entering the grasslands. Tonight, you'll arrive in Ulan-Ude. You have crossed the continent, survived the Urals, spanned the taiga, and skirted the oldest lake on Earth. You are tired. You smell faintly of smoked fish and coal dust, and your internal clock is shattered. But as you lean back against the vibrating wall of the compartment, you realize you have never felt more awake. The train shudders to a halt in Ulan-Ude. If you were looking for a symbol of the Soviet Union's strange, enduring afterlife, you would find it here. You have a 45-minute stop. Enough time to dash into the city square. There, towering over the pavement, is the head. It is the largest head of Vladimir Lenin in the world. A bronze skull standing 25 feet tall, weighing 42 tons. There is no body, just a massive, brooding cranium of the revolutionary leader, his eyes narrowed against the wind. It is surreal, Ozymandian, and distinctly Buryat. The sculptor gave Lenin slightly Asian features, blending the local ethnicity with the state ideology. Back at the station, a significant shuffling of the deck occurs. This is the great filtering. You watch from your window as a large contingent of backpackers and tour groups disembark with their heavy rucksacks. They are defecting. They are transferring to the Trans-Mongolian line, which veers south from here, cutting across the Gobi Desert to Beijing. That is the scenic route, the holiday route. But you're not going south. You are staying on the main line. You are committing to the Rossiya in its purest form. When the train lurches forward, leaving the Beijing-bound travelers on the platform, the carriage feels suddenly empty. The noise level drops. The performative aspect of the journey evaporates. You are now entering the wild east. The stretch from Ulan-Ude to Khabarovsk is the longest, toughest, and least forgiving leg of the journey. It is over 2,000 kilometers of rugged terrain, running parallel to the Chinese border. This is the Baikalsky Krai, the Trans-Baikal. Historically, this was the end of the line for the Tsar's enemies. When the Decembrist revolutionaries were exiled in 1825, this is where they were sent to rot. It was a definition of nowhere. The landscape reflects this hardness. The rolling steppes of Buryatia give way to gnarly, scrubby hills and dense larch forests. The trees here look like they have been fighting a war with the wind for centuries. They are twisted, stunted, and tough. Life on board shifts gears. The Provodnik relaxes. With the tourists gone, the service becomes less formal and more human. He sits in the corridor drinking tea, leaving his cabin door open. The remaining passengers are serious travelers. Traders moving goods from the Chinese border, soldiers transferring to the Pacific Fleet, and families returning to the remote settlements of the Amur region. You venture into the dining car. It is no longer the social hub it was near Moscow. It is quieter, grimier, and more authentic. The menu has changed, too. The fancy European dishes are gone. Now, it is pelmeni meat dumplings and solyanka, a thick, sour soup made of pickles, olives, and leftover meats. You order the soup. It arrives steaming hot, served by a waitress who looks like she could bench press the locomotive. She doesn't smile, but she brings you extra bread without asking. As you eat, you look out the window. Darkness has fallen, but you see lights in the distance. Not street lights, but searchlights. You are riding the border. For hundreds of miles, the Trans-Siberian tracks run alongside the Amur River. On the other side of that black water is China. It is tantalizingly close. You can sometimes see the neon glow of Chinese cities reflected in the river, bright, dynamic, and pulsing with energy. On your side, the Russian side, it is dark, silent, and watchful. The contrast is stark. It is a geopolitical fault line visible through a dirty train window. This leg of the journey induces a specific psychological state known as train delirium. You've been moving for 5 days. The constant vibration has rewired your inner ear. You no longer walk in a straight line. You sway, compensating for turns that aren't there. Your sense of time is obliterated. You stop looking at your watch. You stop caring about the date. There's only the rhythm. Clack, 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 clack. You return to your compartment. You are alone now. The engineer got off in Ulan-Ude. You have the luxury of space, but the silence is amplified. You spread your map out on the empty bunk. You trace the red line. You are crossing the Amur Oblast. This region is famous for one of the strangest administrative anomalies in history, the Jewish Autonomous Oblast. Late in the night, you pull into a station called Birobidzin. You wipe the condensation from the window and blink in disbelief. The station sign is written in Russian and Yiddish. In the 1930s, Stalin had the idea to create a Soviet Zion, a homeland for Jewish people in the Far East, as a buffer against Japanese expansion. He chose a patch of mosquito-infested swamp thousands of miles from any center of Jewish culture. It was a failure of tragic proportions, yet it persists. As you step out for fresh air, you see a menorah standing in the station square, dusted with Siberian snow. It is a ghost of history, a surreal monument to 20th century social engineering. The train moves on. The night is long. The heating in the carriage is cranked up to combat the deepening cold. It is dry, suffocatingly hot inside, while it is minus 30 degrees outside. You lie in your bunk in a t-shirt, sweating, listening to the steel groan. This is the endurance test. There are no major sights here, no famous lakes, no big cities for another day. It is just the sheer, crushing magnitude of the Russian landmass. You are beginning to understand why this country is the way it is. When the land is this big, this cold, and this empty, the individual feels very small. Control seems impossible. Survival seems like the only metric that matters. You drift into a fitful sleep. You dream of the ocean. You can't see it yet, but you can feel the pull of it. The air pressure is changing. The train is racing downhill, shedding the altitude of the continental shelf, rushing towards the sunrise and the sea. On the morning of the 7th day, the light changes one last time. It is no longer the pale, diffuse light of the snow-covered plains. It is sharper, wetter. You wake up as the train rattles across the Amur Bridge into Khabarovsk. This is the last great metropolis of the line. Khabarovsk sits on the high banks of the Amur River, gazing directly at China. The river here is a monster, 3 kilometers wide, a moving highway of brown water and ice. You have a long stop here, an hour. You step out onto the platform and, for the first time in a week, you feel humidity. The air is not just cold, it is damp. It chills you to bone in a way the dry Siberian freeze never did. You are now in the Russian Far East proper. You have turned the corner. The train heads due south now, running parallel to the Sea of Japan, though you cannot see it yet. You are racing down the maritime province, Primorsky Krai. The landscape undergoes a final, exotic mutation. The infinite birch forests vanish. In their place is the Ushuri taiga. This is a temperate rainforest, a strange biological collision zone where northern species meet southern ones. Here, reindeer wander through forests of ginseng and lotus, and somewhere out there in the dense, tangled undergrowth are the last of the Amur tigers. You stare into the passing woods, fantasizing about seeing orange stripes against the snow, but the forest keeps its secrets. The final afternoon on the train feels like the last day of school. The mood in the carriage is restless. Passengers are packing. The bedding is stripped from bunks and returned to the Provodnik in a heap. The little domestic worlds created over 7 days, the shared food, the hanging laundry, the stacks of books, are dismantled. The carriage returns to being just a metal tube. You sit by the window, watching the kilometer post tick down. 9,200, 9,250. The sun begins to set, casting long purple shadows over the hills. You catch glimpses of water, inlets, bays, marshes. Seagulls appear, wheeling in the sky above the train. It is the most welcome sight you have ever seen. Night falls as you hit the outskirts. The industrial sprawl of a port city rises up to meet you. Cranes, shipping containers, the blinking lights of radio towers. And then the final break. The screech of steel that sounds like a sigh of relief. The train crawls into the station, passing under the archway that says Vladivostok. The motion stops. For a moment, nobody moves. The silence is deafening. Then, the chaos of arrival begins. You grab your bag, which feels strangely heavy after a week of lifting nothing heavier than a tea glass. You step down the metal stairs. You have to catch your balance. The ground feels solid, dead, unmoving. Your legs, conditioned to the constant sway of the carriage, wobble. You are suffering from land sickness. You walk down the platform, swept along by the crowd. You are not looking for a taxi. You are looking for the marker. It stands in the middle of the platform, a simple obelisk crowned with a double-headed eagle. It bears a single number, 9288. 9,288 kilometers. You touch the cold stone. You have traveled a quarter of the way around the world on the ground. You have crossed 7 time zones. You have lived a lifetime inside a blue metal box. But you aren't done yet. There is one last ritual. You walk out of the station. The building is beautiful. A neo-Russian palace that mirrors the Yaroslavsky station in Moscow where you started, creating architectural bookends to the empire. You walk out into the city. Vladivostok is chaotic, hilly, and vibrant. It looks like San Francisco transplanted to the Soviet era. Imported Japanese cars with steering wheels on the right drive on the right side of the road, dodging potholes. You ignore the city. You walk straight ahead, crossing the bridge over the tracks, down toward the smell of salt. You reach the Golden Horn Bay, and there it is, the Pacific Ocean. It is gray, choppy, and smells of diesel and seaweed. Russian warships ride at anchor, their radar dishes spinning lazily. Icebreakers are docked at the quay, scarred and rusty from their battles with the Arctic. You stand at the railing and look out at the water. Moscow is a week behind you. Your life there feels like a story someone else told you. You are exhausted, you are unwashed, and you are shivering in the damp wind. But as you watch the dark waves slap against the concrete embankment, you feel a profound, quiet victory. You didn't fly over the world. You didn't skip the hard parts. You earned every mile. You saw the trees, the snow, the factories, and the faces. You felt the size of the planet in your bones. You turn your back on the ocean and head into the city to find a hotel, a hot shower, and a bed that doesn't move. The train is behind you now, resting in the yard, cooling down. But you know that tonight, when you close your eyes, you will still hear it. Clack, 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 clack. Let's rewind the clock to day 6. You are back in Ulan-Ude. The giant head of Lenin stares down at you. But this time, instead of staying on the main Russian line heading east, your train veers south. The psychological shift is immediate. You are leaving the wild east of Siberia and entering the ancient silence of a steppe. The moment you cross the border at Noshki, the Cyrillic alphabet disappears, replaced by the vertical script of classical Mongolian and Cyrillic hybrids. The Provodnik exchange, too. The Russian efficiency is replaced by a relaxed, nomadic hospitality. The tea is no longer black with lemon. It is milky, salty, and mixed with butter. You wake up the next morning in the Gobi Desert. This is not the sand dune desert of Arabia. This is a gravel ocean. It is a landscape of infinite browns and ochres, dotted with white jares and herds of Bactrian camels watching the train with prehistoric indifference. The horizon is so distant, it feels like you can see the curvature of the earth. You arrive in Ulaanbaatar, the coldest capital city in the world. It is a jarring mix of Soviet concrete blocks, modern glass skyscrapers, and nomadic tents pitched right in the city center. You might stop here to sleep in a gur, smelling the burning dung fuel, listening to throats singing that mimics the sound of wind. But the train pushes on. You head southeast, towards the Chinese border at Erlian. Here, you witness the most fascinating mechanical ballet of the entire journey, the bogey change. Russia and Mongolia run on the broad Russian gauge. China runs on standard gauge. The train cannot simply cross the border. It doesn't fit the tracks. In the middle of the night, inside a massive, hangar-like shed, the entire train is lifted into the air by hydraulic jacks. With you still inside it, you hear the clanking of heavy machinery. The Russian wheel sets are rolled out from underneath you. The narrower Chinese wheel sets are rolled in. The train is lowered. It is a literal clash of empires happening beneath your mattress. You wake up on the final morning, and the world has exploded into color. Gone are the monochrome snows of Siberia and the brown dust of the Gobi. You are in the jagged mountains north of Beijing. The train snakes through lush valleys, past reservoirs and terrace fields. And then you see it. It appears on the tops of the mountains, dipping and rising with the terrain. The Great Wall. You are not looking at it from a crowded tourist bus. You are viewing it from the window of the train that brought you from Moscow. Seeing the wall after 6,000 miles of wilderness gives it a terrifying context. You understand why it was built. You have just crossed a vast, ungovernable emptiness it was meant to keep out. The train descends from the mountains into the chaotic, smoggy, electric energy of Beijing. You pull into Beijing railway station. The contrast is total. You started in the silent, snowy reverence of Russia and ended in the humid, hyperspeed bustle of China. You step off the train. The air smells of spices, exhaust, and humidity. You have traded vodka for tea, bread for rice, and snow for neon. Whether you chose the ice of Vladivostok or the heat of Beijing, the feeling is the same. The ground beneath your feet feels solid, but your mind is still moving at 60 miles per hour, rattling somewhere back in the taiga.